The popularity of science presentations convinced magicians they should incorporate some of science, their theatrical and dramatic elements into their own acts. Magicians began studying the science shows to get ideas about how to make their own performances more entertaining. One popular component of early science shows was mechanical figures that seemed to come alive, called automata. They were constructed with metal gears and springs and were crafted to resemble living creatures. They were often used in clock towers, where they came out and danced and played musical instruments at certain hours during the day. Automata operated without any obvious help from strings or other external forces, and their inner workings were always carefully hidden. An early example was created by Albertus Magnus, a German bishop and philosopher born around 1200 CE. Magnus is said to have spent nearly 30 years of his life building a mechanical head that could think for itself. The head, which was made of brass, was able to answer questions that were put to it and was capable of solving mathematical problems. Eventually, according to legend, Magnus was able to affix a body to the head, creating a walking robot very similar to C-3PO from Star Wars. Some artists made automata that stood alone and behaved just like humans and animals. In the 1730s, a Frenchman craftsman named Jacques de Vaucanson built a mechanical flute blade that could play a dozen tunes. On a flute, it was an intricate piece of machinery, yet all it could do was play the flute. The Vaucanson became more famous for building the mechanical duck that he exhibited all over Europe. This automaton, the singular of automata, contained more than 4,000 parts and was able to walk and flap its wings. It could even eat exactly like a real live duck. The duck could grab the grain with its bill, swallows it, and then create the result. The Wilkinson did this by building a complex set of gears, tubing, and various secret mechanisms inside the duck. Throughout his life, he refused to show anyone how the duck worked. One of the most imaginative automata was constructed by Pierre Jacques Gros in the late 1700s, called the Writer. It was a mechanical boy made of approximately 6,000 parts. The mechanical boy sat at the table and held a pen and, on command, could write selected poems on a piece of paper. Other automata around Europe could play chess or tell fortunes or smoke pipes or answer questions. Automata appeared to be magical creatures. If you opened them up, though, you could see the pumps and the fluid and the moving parts that made them work. The springs, gears, tubing, and other mechanical devices inside the automata would eventually inspire magicians to use the same technology to create a new kind of stage act. The man who brought science and magic together in part of using automata was an Italian science professor named Giuseppe Pinetti. Born in 1750, Pinetti was so good at demonstrating chemistry and physics in his classroom that even people who weren't his students would ask to see his science demonstrations. Realizing he had a gift for educating and entertaining, Pinetti decided to perform his science experiment in public. Pinetti also used a few sleight of hand tricks as part of his science lectures. knowing that they would attract curious audiences. Calling himself Professor Pinati, he wanted to set himself apart from other magicians. Common magicians did tricks, waited for applause, and collected money. As far as he was concerned, that was boring. Instead, Professor Pinetti was determined to make his shows something grand, something people would talk about long after they had left the theater. He began by dressing himself as a nobleman, wearing a very expensive clothing. He then built a stage in a Paris theater that featured elegant decorations to make it feel like he and the audience were in a palace. Chandeliers and fine furniture made his stage seem luxurious. Unbeknownst to the audience, the decorations were also part of the act. They helped conceal some of the tools he used to perform his tricks. Pinatti's style of magic was so extravagant that it had to be performed on a specially designed indoor stage. This was not a show that could be done on a table or a sidewalk. It featured machinery, magic cabinets, lengths of rope, and especially designed equipment. Plus, Pinatti had all kinds of tools and objects that helped make his show something no street performer could ever do. These items came to be known as props because they were part of the property that the magician set out on the stage. The professor also changed the way magicians behaved on stage. He acted as if he were the most important, most mysterious, and most intelligent person in the room. Instead of being a mere performer, there only to amuse, he positioned himself as an authority, someone to be listened to and watched carefully. He took charge of the stage as he were conducting an orchestra or presenting an extraordinary classroom lesson. As a result, Pinatti's audience always paid attention to him. In 1784, Pinatti's fame became so widespread that he traveled to London to perform in a theater usually reserved for plays. He charged an admission fee that was so much as a theater ticket, which was considered an extravagant sum to most people. This may have been the first time a magician presented his acts in a truly respectable place, or at least what the richest and most powerful people in London thought was respectable. Pinatti's show, like opera and ballet, was proper entertainment, not just something that scoundrels performed at festivals and street fairs. Reports from papers of the time indicate that Professor was good at his tricks, but not great like Bushinger. However, he did have one trick that made him especially famous, something that other magicians couldn't do. And the reason they couldn't do it was because they didn't have the elaborate equipment Pinatti had. To begin his famous trick, the professor brought on stage a tiny orange tree in a pot. He watered it with what he claimed was a magical liquid. Suddenly and quite quickly the tree started growing, and full-size oranges appeared on its branches. The tiny plant had blossomed into a mature fruit tree in just a few seconds. Pinatti then plucked oranges from the tree and gave them to the audience to eat. It was a remarkable trick that wowed audiences hundreds of years ago, and it is popular to this day. The trick is in knowing that it wasn't a real orange tree, and that automata don't always have to be in the shape of a human or animal. Sometimes mechanical marvels can be in the shape of trees. Pinetti's act was a turning point in magic. His glamorous stage setup and his commanding presence impressed audience, and they always left wanting to see more. He was applauded every time he took the stage, and people paid him a lot of money to perform. In a way, the professor was like magic's first rock star. As soon as other magicians saw how much audiences enjoyed seeing magic in a wondrous setting, they copied Pinatti's stage setup and his showmanship. In 1805, 5 years after the death of Professor Pinetti, the first spectacular stage magician was born. He was a Frenchman named Jean-Robert Houdin, and he would one day be known as the father of modern magic. Robert Houdin began his career as a maker of watches and clocks. In addition to timepieces, he built his own automata, including little robot-like people that performed circus acts. One of these automata was purchased by P. T. Barnum, whose name would eventually be associated with the biggest circus in the world, the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. One day, Robert Houdin went to a bookshop to buy two books on advanced clockmaking. The bookseller wasn't paying attention and accidentally gave him two books on how to perform magic tricks. Robert Houdin didn't realize the mistake until he got home, so he spent the night reading about magic. He was amazed by what he read and wanted to learn how to do all the tricks. He later said getting those two books was the most important event in my life. Robert Houdin soon found that he was very good at performing the tricks in the books. When not working on clocks, Robert Houdin began to perform magic at private parties and small gatherings. Word of his talent quickly spread, and he earned enough money to work on his act full-time. Leaving clock repair behind, he turned his shop into a place where he designed elaborate mechanical magic tricks. Like Professor Pinetti, Robert Houdin divided his show into specific acts, one to talk about science, one to demonstrate automata, and another to perform magic. Desiring to learn even more, he became friendly with many magicians performing in shows around Paris. Some of them already knew Robert Houdin, thanks to his automata, and they were happy to teach him their own tricks. Robert Houdin was soon to step ahead of most performers of the time because he understood how each act worked. He understood he could build his own automata to set himself apart from all the others. Robert Houdin used his knowledge of technology and magic to create one great act. Robert Houdin decided that the only place he could do that kind of magic was envisioned was a great big theater. In 1845, he opened his own theater in Paris devoted just to magic shows. One of the reasons he wanted his own theater was because of how complicated his show was. The stage itself was an extremely important part of the show. It had to be constructed with special wiring, electricity, lighting, trapdoors, and hidden props. It was outfitted with Robert Houdin's own automata and allowed him to develop the kind of and keep secret his own magic tricks. Similar to Professor Pinetti, many decades before him, Robert Houdin also changed the way magicians looked on stage. If people were going to get dressed up in their finest clothes to come see him perform, he would dress up as a family in a suit coat, a top hat and a tie. A perfect example of Robert Houdin's blending of technology and magic was his invention of a trick called the light and heavy chest, and set a small box on the table and invited a member of the audience to pick it up. The person did this easily. Then Robert Houdin would say a few words over the box and ask the person to lift it again. This time it was impossible to lift it. In fact, the box wouldn't budge even if a few people tried to move it. Robert Houdin accomplished this trick by bringing science in the form of electricity to his act. The box had a metal bottom and a huge electromagnet was hidden in a table. An electromagnet is a type of extremely strong magnet that is activated when electricity passes through it. While Robert Houdin was saying his magic word over the box, an assistant hiding off stage flipped a switch that turned on the electromagnet. It was so strong the metal bottom box couldn't be pried away from it until the switch was turned off. No one who tried to lift the box ever could. To the moment Robert Houdin stepped back on stage and signaled his assistant to turn off the magnet, he would pick up the box as if it weighed nothing at all. Robert Houdin also was a master mentalist or mind reader. He was especially good at performing a feat called second sight. He would blindfold his assistant, usually his son, Emil, and then ask a spectator to choose a single card from a deck of cards. Robert Houdin would concentrate on the card and ask his blindfolded assistant to guess what it was. The assistant always guessed correctly. The act shocked the audience. There was no way the assistant could have seen the card, and Robert Houdin had not given the assistant any hints as to what the card might be. The audience believed that Robert Houdin had mysterious mental powers that allowed him to send his thoughts to his assistant's head. Robert Houdin's magic was so spectacular and so convincing that the French government hired him as a secret weapon. In 1856, France was in control of Algeria, a country in North Africa. Many Algerians didn't like having the French run their nation, and a small group of Muslim holy men called the Marabouts planned a revolt against the French government. The Marabouts, who believed that they had supernatural powers, used tricks like eating glass to prove to other Algerians that they had the power to defeat the French. The French government sent Robert Houdin to Africa to show the Algerians that he possessed greater powers than the Marabout magicians. He performed the light and heavy chest trick on one of the Marabouts. Robert Houdin allowed the man to lift the box, then supposedly put a spell on him that drained all the energy out of the man. When the Algerian magician tried to lift the box again, he failed. Robert Houdin then added a little more electricity to the box so that it gave the man a shock. The magician screamed in pain. The Algerian was stunned to see that someone from France had such incredible powers. They decided not to rebel against the French. Robert Houdin, a magician, became a national hero. When magicians first made their way to the stage in enclosed buildings, they were aided by something perhaps not even entirely expected: smoke and darkness. Performed on street corners during the day, magicians' tricks were limited by how much the audience could see in the sunlight. Magicians couldn't allow the audience to see them putting things out from under a table or out of a sleeve, things that they were easy to see in broad daylight. They also couldn't perform outside at night because then the audience couldn't see anything at all, which was just as bad. Being indoors for magicians was like opening a whole new bag of tricks. First of all, magicians could light just the part of the stage they wanted the audience to see. Putting a bright spotlight on a table covered in white cloth or on a woman in a bright white dress made the rest of the stage seem much darker. This darkness and the glare of the white cloth helped to conceal thin black wires and machinery painted with flat dull black paint. By shifting where spotlights were at a particular time, the magician could focus the audience's eyes exactly where he wanted them. The rest of the stage would be hidden in the shadows. In the early days of magic theater, spotlights were not the electrical lights we see in theaters and concert halls today. They were like high intensity candles. They, they created a bright light by burning a chalky white chemical known as lime. Even today, we say that celebrities are living in the limelight. These limelights gave off a white hazy smoke which floated about the stage. Additionally, the rest of the theater was dimly lit by gaslight, which produced a bit of its own smoke. Early stage magic was performed at a time when people regularly smoked cigars, cigarettes, and pipes wherever they went. When this smoke was added to the gaslight and the limelight in the theater, it creates then another layer of haze, like a very light fog, that hung in the air around the stage. This haze further helped the magicians keep some of his secrets away from the prying eyes of the audience. Eventually, the use of the electric lights and a general ban on indoor cigarette smoking eliminated this smoke screen from the magician's bag of tricks. To make up for this, performers today use high-tech smoke and fog machines to create the haze that helps cover up parts of the trick. Perhaps the most famous trick that no one has ever seen performed in the Indian rope trick. It is a simple trick to describe: a magician takes a length of rope and tosses it high into the air. On command, the rope freezes in position, almost like a flagpole. Then an assistant to the magician climbs the rope, which has risen so high that it disappears above the stage curtain, or perhaps into the branches of the tree. Then, when the magician commands the rope to fall back to the ground, the assistant is gone. Apparently, the assistant has climbed so high that he has disappeared into thin air. It's one of the most incredible tricks of all time, if it's true. There are reports of this trick being performed hundreds of years ago in China and as recently as the 1800s in India. Tellers of this magical tale usually claim that they saw it performed outside. The only explanation modern magicians have for how the Indian rope trick might have been done is if someone up in a tree or on a rooftop was able to grab the rope and hold it steady. Or perhaps it was hooked into the thin wire already running above the ground. Nevertheless, to this day, no magician has been able to do this trick and make it believable. Many doubt that it was anything but a magical myth. Thus, the Indian rope trick may be one of that is forever talked about but never seen. Second side of mind reading is the ability to guess an object's identity while being blindfolded. It is easy to perform but requires some advanced practice with another person. It takes two because you need one person to select the object and the other to guess what it is. Let's say the magician is the one blindfolded and the assistant is in the audience. The assistant takes a cell phone from a person in the audience and asks the magician to identify the object. The magician does it quickly. The trick is done again, and the correct answer is given no matter whether the assistant holds up keys, a wallet, a dollar bill, a pair of sunglasses, a book, anything. How is this done when the magician can't see the object? The secret is all in how the assistant poses the question to the magician. The assistant and magician have a pre-arranged code that allows them to quickly figure out what object is. Here's an example list of codes you can use. Note that each question asks the same thing about but is phrased in a unique way. It's up to the magician and the assistant to remember the code. I'm holding an object in my hand. Can you tell me what it is? I have in my hand an object. Can you identify it? Can you guess what I am holding in my hand? I'd like you to guess the object I've got in my hand. Can you do that? Can you tell me the name of the object I'm holding? If you get the idea, additional code words can be used to help identify certain features like color. Once the object is identified, let's say it's a cell phone, the assistant can describe it with a code words for the color. For instance, the word nice would mean blue, the word pretty would mean black, and the word cool would mean silver, and on and on. This takes a lot of memorizing, but it is a marvelous trick two people can perform. The most amazing practitioner of second sight was a man named Charles Moritz. Moritz and his sister Lillian were able to perform second sight without asking questions. Moritz would simply ask a person from the audience for an object, thank the person who handed it to him, and occasionally mutter words like please or thank you out loud. There were no other words that could have acted as codes, but Lillian sitting blindfolded on the stage was always able to identify the object. It was a tremendous feat and Moritz never revealed how he performed it. Modern magicians believe Moritz and his sister had created a code based on time, and every second that passed between the words Moritz muttered signaled a different object. It's amazing to think the two of them could keep perfect time in their minds without looking at a clock or watch in order to pull off the trick.